I told them is some basic changes we can make. I mean, let's just start with the basics. 3 armed security guards in every school across this country to make sure that never happens again. We know we can do that with 3 armed security guards. Now let's get to the root cause. It's the mental health epidemic. Bring back those psychiatric institutions and hospitals in a way that avoids the abuses and avoids the, therefore, legal challenges to them. But that's what we need, because the top form of psychiatric mental health institution care today is actually our prison system. And it doesn't work very well, because when you let them out, many of them are actually far worse off. And it's ill-equipped to take on the numbers of people who don't need to be imprisoned before they do something that actually deserves imprisonment, but actually needs psychiatric help in this country. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is there's something deeper going on. There's a spiritual vacuum in this country. It's an old expression that goes, if there's a hole the size of God in your heart and God doesn't fill it, something else will instead. Young people now, I think it's true of all of us, we are starved for purpose and meaning and identity at a time in our history when the things that used to fill our void in our heart, those things have disappeared. Faith, family, patriotism, hard work. When we think about bringing back a lot of those psychiatric institutions, I think there are actually a lot of faith-based approaches that can actually make a bigger difference than just pumping people up with pharmaceuticals in those institutions as well. And I think this, too, is part of the job of the next president, not just to enact those policies. And I think those are sensible and important policies. Actually, one more on the list that I would add is I don't think kids under the age of 16 should be using addictive social media products. If you can't actually smoke an addictive cigarette by the age of 18, you shouldn't be using an addictive social media product under the age of 16 either. So these are simple policies we can talk about, but some of this is going to be stop paying people more money not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house. 25% of kids are growing up in single-parent households. That's also driving the mental health epidemic across this country. Paying people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work. Well, you know what? Not only does that hold our economy back, not only does that add to our national debt, it's also not good for the very people you're supposedly helping. Sitting in your parents' basement playing video games, smoking pot. It's not good for anything other than creating more depression and anxiety, which then becomes drug use, fentanyl, and worse. But part of the job of the next U.S. president is also to fill that vacuum with our national character, to answer who we are. And the left is good at this, actually. They'll fill that void with something, give you wokeism, systemic racism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism. And I think our side, we've grown lazy, actually. We let the other side fill that vacuum while we're sitting here not offering a vision of our own, but just criticizing theirs. So I want to see a conservative movement that now levels up to say we want to talk more about the value of the individual, family, nation, God. That beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to actually stand for something. And so, yes, a lot of this is policy, and those are examples of policies I'll stand for to address the mental health epidemic and to make sure what happened in Perry, hopefully, never happens again in this country if we get this right. But some of this is reviving our national character, too, and that's the standard I want you to hold us to. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll go right up here, and then we'll go to the back.
So I think I'm kind of going to piggyback off that.
Sure.
I'm a 23-year-old. I'm scared about his future and what kind of debt we're leaving
Yes.
kids with. What can we do to change that?
He's not here, is he?
No.
Okay. So I will say I have 2 obligations to the next generation. One is young people who are in this room. You have about $200,000 of debt on your shoulders that you didn't sign up for. That's unjust. It's in the form of our national debt per person. Here's how we address that. And the other obligation I have to you, by the way, and these go together, is to make sure you don't have somebody gun over your shoulder in a trench fighting World War III when it's our job to actually advance American interests rather than somebody else's war. We have a $34 trillion national debt problem. You want the punchline of our way out of it without touching Social Security or Medicare? Keep in mind, half the Republican Party wants to ship more money to Ukraine while cutting Social Security and veterans benefits here at home. That's unjust. If you want to really address our national debt, and I will, here's how we do it. First, simplest and fastest step starting day one. Get the oil and natural gas out from underneath our ground and sell it. And use that to buy down about $8 trillion of our national debt instantly. It's the easiest thing I can do. We get that job done. Second, take on the federal bureaucracy. 75% reduction. Mass firing of federal bureaucrats. If there's one thing I get done, shut down the deep state. And number three, don't repeat the mistakes of the past. $7 trillion of that $34 trillion national debt came from 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that did not advance the American interest. Now they're looking to repeat that in places like Ukraine. I'll put an end to it. End that Ukraine war, end foreign aid to any country that does not actually have a national debt problem. It's as big as ours. That's 99% of our foreign aid. Those 3 things, our national debt problem is under control, and we can look, both of us, you and I, look your son in the eye and say that you still have that same American dream that we knew of in this country without crippling you with a debt that you didn't sign up for. That's what we owe you. And note that we did that without touching Social Security and Medicare. Not cutting a dime of those Social Security benefits. Now, I go the other way. What if I told you there was a way that we could actually increase Social Security benefits without touching our national debt? I think this would be of interest in this country. Well, I told you, it turns out there's a way you can do it. Look at the simple arithmetic. If 40 years ago we had allowed the Social Security Trust Fund to be invested in a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and treasuries, same way your financial advisor will tell you with your 401k account to do, that portfolio and that Social Security Trust Fund would then allow somebody who's collecting $1,800 a month in Social Security right now, check in the mail, to be collecting $18,000 per month right now. Think about the impact of that per month in your mailbox. That's government malpractice of the highest order. I can't change the past, but we can change the future. So we'll cut the national debt problem without touching Social Security and Medicare in terms of cuts. And for the next generation, we'll fix that and do it the right way so they can be collecting that $18,000 per month check. That's what it means to put America first. Advance our interests. Do it by being smart. We don't have to actually have trade-off between what's right for people in this country and the national debt if we actually do this right. And I do think it's going to take a CEO of the White House to get this right. I do think it's going to have to be somebody from the outside, somebody who's not bought and paid for. And I think somebody with fresh legs from the next generation to reach and lead the new generation, your 23-year-old son and his generation. So you tell him I consider that my obligation to him and his generation. He does his part. We're going to do it.
First, thanks for being here. Appreciate that. You might have touched on it in your previous answer. How do you plan to incorporate the aspects of the Democratic message to appeal to that voter base?
Yeah, so look, I think that in some ways what happened was you have people like Obama or others that came around and co-opted our shared American messages, but used that to actually advance the left-wing agenda. I don't think they deserve a monopoly on that. Actually, one of the things that some of the other super PACs have criticized me for is they say, oh, maybe this guy sounds like Obama. Well, when I say he pluribus unum from many one, yeah, I don't want the Democrats to actually have a monopoly on that pro-American message. I want to use that pro-American message to advance our values, as I think we ought to. Those 1776 values, they don't belong to one political party. The idea that you get to speak your mind openly as long as I get to in return. The idea that you get ahead in this country not in the color of your skin, but in the content of your character and your contributions. That we're a nation founded on the rule of law. That's why I said I will move our military to our southern border and our northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law. And so I'm not going to do it by compromising on our policies. Things I'm going to do, I'll end affirmative action in this country and race-based preferences. I'll use our military to protect our own borders. I'll end birthright citizenship for those who are here illegally and their kids. It shouldn't apply. Yes, if you are in this country illegally, you'll be returned to your country of origin. Yes, I do think that we need single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday. with paper ballots and government-issued ID, and yes, English as the national language and the only language that shows up on a ballot. And as making policies one by one, the New York Times, whoever else is going to hit me for saying these things. There's an article that came out earlier today where the New York Times has hit me for that point about English being the only language on the ballot. But if you take the media distortion out of them, for me, these are tied to the principles that unite all of us as Americans. From many, one. That's the founding creed of this country. We used to talk about the melting pot in this country. And no, that's not racist or xenophobic. That's unifying in this country. So the way we're going to unite this country, and I do care about uniting this country, it isn't by compromising on the policies, but it's by reviving the shared ideals that unite all of us as Americans. See, those are, in some ways, they're radical ideals. They're not moderate ideals, they're radical ideals. The idea that you get to speak your mind as long as I get to in return. For most of human history, that was a crazy idea. If old world Europe, King George was here, he would be laughing at us that you could run a country where the subjects could speak their minds openly, that they get an equal voice and vote who runs the country. That would be a laughable idea for most of human history. But that's what makes America great. That's what makes America itself. And so to win over people who may have thought of themselves as Democrats, I'll tell you this. Our diversity is not our strength. Our strength is what unites us across that diversity. Actually relates in some ways to that first question. Without that, what are we? We're really just a bunch of different looking two-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin. Walk in some geographic space that we call our country, doing what our iPhones told us to do on a given day. On a given day, that's what America looks like to me at times, but that's not the America we know. America isn't just a place, it is a vision of what that place can be. And yes, I'm here to revive that vision. What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? It means we believe in the ideals of 1776. And I don't care if you're black or white, or for that matter, red or blue. If you agree on those shared ideals, then in this election, we're on the same team. And that's how I want to deliver you a landslide election. You all make me your nominee. There's another question, and then I'll go ahead first. Yeah.
What are you going to do about everybody that's getting subsidies for not even working with
It's a smart question. That's also added to the national debt that's back on your shoulders. How old are you now? 13. Almost 13. I give you 13. My son said he's 14. So what we're doing is we're using our own taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home instead of to go to work. At a time where we have more open job positions than we have people actually looking for work. That shrinks our economy. That's why most small businesses, the top obstacle they face is filling those open positions. So the answer is actually really simple. Attach work requirements to every form of federal aid. Medicaid, welfare, it doesn't matter. Attach work requirements. On the left, today says that's oppressive. Some might even call it racist, although that word has lost all meaning, so it really doesn't mean much when someone calls you that.
But actually, back in the 1990s, even if you look at Bill Clinton, even if you look at Joe Biden, who was a senator when Bill Clinton was U.S. president, they were favoring work requirements that are far more aggressive than the ones that they object to today. For example, even in last year's debt negotiations, there was one of these where able-bodied persons between the ages of 18 and 55, if they're childless, in order to get more than 3 continuous months of aid, they had to work at least 20 hours per week, and that was considered oppressive. A, that's bad for our economy. B, it's unfair to those who are working. But C, it's even worse for the very people you're supposedly helping, driving that mental health epidemic. People, one of the greatest losses of purpose in this country is the loss of self-worth. When people lose the ability to at least work for what's given to them, that's when you actually have depression and anxiety that runs on steroids. I mean, you're a young person, you're not asking me for life advice on this, but one of the things I've found is My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago in search of opportunity. I've gone on to found multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. My wife, Apurva, is a throat surgeon, one of the best in the country at what she does at Ohio State, saving lives every day. And she's a hero. She's doing this with me. She was with me till 11 p.m. on the campaign trail last night, doing this with me because this is about the life of our country. But one of the things that we've learned is, people ask, did you grow up in privilege? I actually didn't grow up in economic privilege. For most of our upbringing, we ended up being solidly middle class, which is great. But I had the ultimate privilege of two parents in the house who instilled in us a focus on education and a strong work ethic. That's what gave us our sense of self-worth. And so I don't think that's kind to anybody. That's how we're raising our kids in the same circumstance as well. And so I think if we give that sense of work ethic back in this country and bring that back, it starts actually in the educational system and in the family. Right now, we live in a moment where even if you're, I don't know how it is in your school, but it seems to me that even if you're the best kid in the class, you're taught to hide your excellence, right? You're supposed to apologize for hard work or apologize for excellence. It's not the cool thing anymore in this country. I think it is pretty cool. And I think we need to bring it back and reward those who work hard and get ahead, to say that you're uncapped in terms of what you can achieve in this country. And we're going to stop using our money to pay people to actually be the ones who are doing not what's right for their country, but not even right for themselves. We're going to put an end to it, attach work requirements, and they can call me racist or oppressive or whatever they want. It's not going to matter because we know we're doing the right thing for this country. That's how we're going to get it done. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.
So my question is also has to pertain to mental health.
Yes.
My husband he works in the mental health field, social work, caring for handicapped people and people with other issues. During COVID, our oldest son got really depressed and was cutting himself, tried to commit suicide. So our daughter has bipolar. She's only 13. It's really hard to live with it, but it's also harder to find people in that kind of work area because there's no money to be had making, and they're like the best people on earth. They do the best kind of work for the mental health.
Yeah.
So what are you able to do with the economy rising, and yet their wages, they don't have any, they don't get raises? It's hard to survive with the life, the economy that is right now. What are you able to provide?
Thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing with you what your kids are going through. And how's your son doing?
Better.
He's a little better now. All right. Well, I will tell you this is, it starts with the fact that we don't have a health care system in this country. And to your husband, what's your name, sir, if you may ask? Andy, thank you for doing what you do. My mother was a geriatric psychiatrist. She treated patients with PTSD in the VA system. And it's only worse than even when she was actually working long before she retired. My wife is, as I said, working in the healthcare system. I've come within the healthcare system too. Here's the problem in this country is we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system that will pay for expensive interventions and all kind of pill pushing on the back end, but without actually paying for basic preventative care or mental health care on the front end. Now, I'll tell you why that is. This is fixable, actually. It's because we don't have competitive private health insurance in this country because of lobbying. So the health insurance companies have lobbied for a special kind of exemption from antitrust rules, so they all coordinate with each other. And that's what causes the rise of healthcare insurance premiums, but they also fail to cover the kind of care that then becomes all the more difficult to afford when you're in a struggling economy, to then make the out-of-pocket costs, to fail to pay to do the things that you actually need long before you get to the point that, God forbid, people like your son have gotten close to in their life. And so if we fix that, get rid of the lobbying, get rid of the corruption. Actually, I've had people in my, thankfully, when we live the American dream, I see investment pitches from people who want to start new companies. I can't tell you the number of entrepreneurs that have come to me looking to start a new private health insurance company because of the need in this marketplace to cover basic mental health care that covers physical fitness long before it goes to diabetes or goes to mental health epidemics. But as a businessman, you look at it and you know this business isn't going to work because the big health insurance companies already have these antitrust exemptions and they don't have the scale to compete with them. So that's what I'll rescind as the next president. Allow for actual competition in the health insurance marketplace. Medicare and Medicaid is such a bureaucratic apparatus. Put that money back in the hands of people who can then buy health insurance in the marketplace that we're in. And that's one of the ways that we actually make healthcare more accessible and more affordable in this country. As it relates to growing the economy, the reason people are struggling right now is prices have gone up in every category. Interest rates have gone up, even to be able to buy a home or to be able to afford a mortgage for your home or car. Yet wages have remained flat. So forget whatever Bidenomics math they're throwing at you. That's the truth that most people in this country understand to be their reality. The good news is there's easy ways to address that, and I think it's going to take somebody who's been a CEO and understands these realities. Take why housing is so inaccessible to even young people in their 20s that might want a starter home. There's all kinds of rules that are land use restrictions, that they call them, that stop you from building new homes if they're on too small of a plot of land. Why? That's again the product of lobbying from larger builders. And the lobbying increase the supply of housing. That brings down the cost. It grows this economy. Same thing with energy. We're constraining the supply of energy production in the United States. That drives up the cost of energy, drives up the cost of everything, makes it far less affordable. When you don't have the sense that you can achieve that American dream, it drives that mental health epidemic, which then you have health insurance plans that won't even pay for what you actually want to access, and then it becomes a vicious cycle. And so I know that doesn't make you or your family any better off for it if I tell you this, but what makes your story remarkable is that it's actually quickly becoming the norm in this country. And I know that doesn't make you feel any better, but it's the truth. But I think that if we actually put somebody in here who understands as a businessman how to basically address the basic elements of reviving this economy, for me this is second nature. Address the basics of a healthcare system that isn't a healthcare system, it's a sick care system because it's a monopoly profit system created by the health insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, then yes, I think we can have a new generation that we can tell them, you know what, the American dream still can be alive and well. I couldn't tell your son today the American dream is alive and well. It's not. It's alive and hanging on for life support. But I think it can be well again. And I think that this is our last window to get this right, especially to your question earlier, if the interest payments on our national debt become the largest line item on our federal budget, then we're done. That's about 5 years from now. So we're not working with a lot of time. If my kids are in high school before we get this right, I don't think we have a country left. But I do think this is our moment to set it right, and that's the standard I want you to hold us to if you put us there. And so thank you for sharing your family story. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll go here and then here.
If you had the power of the presidency now, what orders would you give to the military, apart from going to the border, or if you want to respond to that, but if you had the power of the presidency now, what orders would you give to our military leadership?
Well, I think that the first fix is actually at the level of the Pentagon. We have a managerial class at the Pentagon. When you have 90% of the people working in the military are good men and women who want to actually be mission aligned and mission focused in advancing the protection of our citizens here, that aren't able to do that because the people at the Pentagon have decided to indoctrinate them with systemic racism and white guilt and white privilege. Actually, there was a study that came out yesterday where a report that said a lot of what Biden actually perpetuated was just made up. The supposed instances of white rage in the military, many of those were manufactured cases that they used to then indoctrinate the rest of the military with that. So I would clean house at the Pentagon and restore the purpose of the U.S. military. To win wars, and more importantly, to avoid them, period. That's the goal of our military, to protect our own citizens. So you asked on day one, what would we do? Day one, we would clean house for all of the old top generals at the Pentagon that have veered away from that mission. And yes, I would move our troops to our own southern border and our own northern border too, from places like Germany where they don't need to be. 40,000 of them stationed in Germany, which doesn't even pay the 2% of its GDP that it's required to spend on military expenses. Germany doesn't spend that because they're free riding on the U.S. That ends on my watch. The 40,000 troops, we'll use them to protect our own borders, which we're failing to protect in this country. And let's get real. I'm going to use a term that some people find incendiary in the mainstream media. That's what they say. I don't think it's incendiary. I think it's truth. If we had 3 or 4 million Asians coming into the United States along the western coast, or 3 to 4 million Africans coming along from the eastern coast, we'd call that what it is. It's an invasion. It's no different when you have 8 million coming across our own southern border. It's an invasion of this country. It's a violation of our national security. And so I think it is a perfectly appropriate use of our own military to protect our own borders. And I get to do that as your next commander-in-chief without asking Congress or anybody else for permission or for forgiveness. And that's why we'll do it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
As far as I can tell, the epicenter of the woke mind virus, as you call it,
Yep.
Came from the universities. Me, for example, got my bachelor's degree for free, and I feel like I still got ripped off. I guess, do you have a plan to recapture that institution?
I do, but I think it's not one by one, because I think the thing about this woke mind virus is it's actually been very pervasive. From K through 12 to universities to corporate America to our own military. It's a much longer story, but what's happened is every institution that used to get criticized from the left for its own failures. I'll give you the short version at least. I wrote my first book on this. Woke Inc. was the first book I wrote. And I saw this firsthand in corporate America. So what happened is after the 2008 financial crisis, a bunch of banks got bailed out in this country that I will say should not have gotten bailed out, using our own taxpayer money to do it. But it was that's the truth. It should have never happened. It was wrong. And they say that was a left-wing talking point back in 2007. I don't care if you call that a left-wing or right-wing talking point. It was wrong. That was a Republican administration that did it. So the left used to criticize the big banks for being the recipients of that. So they played a trick. They said, hey, you know what? Occupy Wall Street, we don't like that very much because that's about taking our money away. But the new woke stuff we're okay with. We'll muse about the racially disparate impact of climate change after we fly in a private jet to Davos. Good work if you can get it. But we won't do it for free. We expect the new left to look the other way when it comes to leaving our own corporate power intact. Silicon Valley, same thing. The old version of break up big tech, remember this? Used to come from the left, actually. So they made the same deal. They said, hey, well, don't worry, you don't break us up. We'll use our monopoly power to censor hate speech or misinformation as you define it, but we don't do it for free. We expect the new left to look the other way when it comes to leaving our monopoly power intact. Coca-Cola used to get hit by the left for diabetes and obesity in the black community. Well, we'll just tell you voting laws in Georgia are racist. We'll train our own employees on how to be less white. Their words, not mine. As long as you leave us alone and keep letting us do what we're doing without being bothered by the left. Get to our military, Mark Milley. General Mark Milley, same story. The left used to hit Republicans for the war in Iraq. Right? Remember, that used to be actually criticism that came from the left. So if you're General Mark Milley, you say, hey, don't worry about that Iraq war stuff. I'll talk about systemic rage and systemic racism and white rage. Well, say the right magic words. And then you get to COVID. Into our schools, they shutter them, especially in the inner cities. Private schools in many of the suburbs did just fine. So somehow this COVID virus only affects teachers in public schools, but not the ones in private schools. It's funny how that works. 2 years later, what are they saying? Math is racist. Now, math isn't racist. 2 plus 2 still equals 4. But what might have been inequitable was failing to teach those black kids in the inner city how to do math for 2 years. So it's woke smoke that they're using to deflect accountability. In the colleges, I think the same thing happened. See, the scam of higher ed started to show up where we've told people you get a head start in the American dream by taking on a bunch of college debt, 4-year degree, become a gender studies major in California or God knows where, and then it didn't work out that way. And as the scam started to become apparent, what they started to say was, oh, that's okay, we'll teach you about, it was oppression and systemic oppression. That's actually what's holding you back, not the fact that we didn't actually give you the skill sets that you paid $40,000 a year to acquire. So it's not just the universities being the epicenter. There are many epicenters. But it happened because every institution, including universities, failed to achieve their true purpose. And then they used the woke smoke to deflect accountability from the left. That's what happened. Now, how do we fix this? I would say go to the head of the snake as it relates to education. That's the U.S. Department of Education. They said you don't get that money from the federal taxpayers unless you adopt these toxic racial and gender ideologies. That's what's actually driving this in our universities and in K through 12 education. I've said that we will shut down the U.S. Department of Education and return that money to parents and teachers across this country, parents who deserve to choose where they send their kids to school. That's one way we do this. A lot of what you see is civil rights violations, forcing people to bow down to the state, to the regime's religion of wokeism, meets the Supreme Court's test for what counts as a religion. Well, that's a civil rights violation, just like you can't fire somebody or demote somebody for being black or gay or Muslim or white or Hindu or Jewish or whatever. You shouldn't be able to do that just because somebody wore the hat of the wrong political candidate, as has happened countless times in this country. So I lay this out in a lot of my books, but I got tired of just sitting around I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I got tired of just sitting around writing books, throwing my hands in the air without actually getting there to solve the problem. I started a new company called Strive to compete with BlackRock and the ESG firms, did as much good kind of damage there as I could, but the head of the snake is still the mother of all bureaucracies. That's the one in the federal government. That's the one I'm going into gut as your next president. And that's what it's going to take to get this job done. And if there's one thing I get done as your next president, it will be to shut down that deep state, shut down that federal bureaucracy. And once we do that, the rest of this becomes easier. And I want to say a word about this. Trump had the right idea on this, too. He was hovering over the right target, but they duped him. They told him you can't do this because of civil service protections. Read the law. Those civil service protections only apply to individual employee firings. They do not apply to mass firings. Mass firings are absolutely what I am bringing to the D.C. bureaucracy. This is how you actually drain the swamp. They duped him. Got to get this done the right way. They said you can't end birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals because you need a constitutional amendment. Read the Constitution. The 14th Amendment is clear. That does not apply to the kids of illegals who are in this country. They said you can't do mass deportations because we only have 6,000 ICE agents. Read the law. The law allows you to serve those warrants using local law enforcement to do it. There's 1 million local law enforcement standing by at the ready to do it. So yes, the country that put a man on the moon can get this done. It takes a president who, yes, comes from the outside, has sharp elbows, willing to break things when necessary, but also a president who knows and deeply understands the law and the Constitution in this country. And those two things don't usually go together. Right? You have the academic legal type over here. You got the business guy who can maybe execute and get things done over here. But those two things don't usually go together. And that is what pulled me into this race. My faith actually teaches me God puts each of us here for a purpose. Each of us has our own unique God-given gifts. Every one of us does. But it is our job to use those God-given gifts to do what is right in the short time that we are given. And I believe right now more than ever we need a president who brings both of those things in, especially a president from that next generation to reach and lead the new generation of Americans. And I think that's how we ultimately defeat this woke mind virus, is also by standing for our shared values. Part of this is when you have a vacuum that runs that deep in your heart, that's when wokeism fills the void. We talked about mental health epidemic. I think wokeism or transgenderism or climatism or COVIDism. These are also just symptoms of that deeper void. We're always going to latch on to something. We're hungry to believe in something bigger than ourselves, yet today we can't even answer what it means to be an American. So that too is my job as your next president. We'll shut down the bureaucracy, revive our national identity, and revive national pride in this country. And if we do that, then yes, I am confident that our best days can actually still be ahead of us. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. We have time for one final question, so we'll give you the final word right there.
What is your plan for the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization? Because to me,
Oh, yeah.
they're above everything that's going on here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are.
And the UN and the SDGs. So the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, ESG, CBDC, WHO, WEF. Generally, if it comes in an acronym, rule of thumb is they're trying to dupe you. They're trying to bore you into submission. The more boring it sounds, the more you have to pay attention to it. CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency, if you're aware of what I'm referring to there. Here's what I'm going to get done. Any organization, domestically or internationally, that's being funded by the federal government, by us, that is hostile to our own sovereignty. Yes, the WHO fits that description. The World Economic Forum fits that description. The UN today fits that description. We're done funding it. We will not pay for organizations who are hostile to our own sovereignty. We will reclaim the sovereignty of the United States of America. You will not use our own taxpayer money to be weaponized back against us. That's what the central bank digital currency is all about. They want to digitize your dollar to be able to wipe your bank account clean if you say something that the government disapproves of. That's what they did to the Canadian truckers, the Freedom Convoy. You might remember that, except maybe you don't because they're long forgotten because that's how they shut them up. It's not going to happen here in the United States. We have to reclaim our sovereignty in the United States, and we have to reclaim our sovereignty as citizens. And it's my job to do that. And I want to say one thing before we wrap on this is you all have a choice to make. This community does. And I worry they're leading us into a trap right now. If you think they're going to let Donald Trump get anywhere near that White House again, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes. And some of those same forces at work that you mentioned, I think, are behind this. If you think that they're going to simply have an election that, if it's won and fought in the right way, that they're going to let him march in, forget about it. These people have made clear they will stop at nothing. And I mean nothing.
How are we going to stop them?
That's why I'm here. I'm telling you that. Right now, we're in the middle of a war for the future of this country between those of us who love the United States of America and this fringe minority who hates our country, between the permanent state and the everyday citizen. Okay, they've laid that trap. I'll tell you how this is working right now. It's plain as day to me. They want to narrow this down to be a two-horse race. Initially, I thought it was with the Democratic puppet. I realized that it increasingly might just be a Republican puppet they put up in the same race. Narrow it down to two, eliminate Trump from contention, and put a puppet they can control back into the White House. That's what's going on in the country right now. It's hiding in plain sight. Do not fall for that trap. They are selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. We owe it to this country not to fall into that trap. Because you know what? Our America First movement, it is bigger than one man. We love Donald Trump because he got this fight started. But it is our job and our duty to finish it. This did not start in 2016. This movement began in 1776. And we owe it to our founding fathers and to this country to make sure we have another 250 years and then some still left. So you got the future of America First standing right here. And I am asking you to do something that may be different than what you were thinking about doing 6 months ago or even 3 months ago. But I'm asking you not to fall into that trap and do the right thing for our country. If you all do your part, I promise you, our family, Apurva and I and our family, we will stop at nothing to do our part, to make sure that we don't have to fall into this trap. We don't have to be this nation in decline. We don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire, as we're taught to believe right now. I think if George Washington were in this room right now, he would say, you know what he would say? as a nation right now, we're really just a little young, actually. That's what our founding fathers would say if they were here today. That you do have another 250 years left yet to go. But it's up to you to step up and seize it, just like we did in 1776. That we're going through our adolescence. We're figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. But we are stronger when we get there. I still think we don't have to be this nation in decline. I believe, and this is my last chance to tell you this. I don't think I could say this to you in 4 years or 8 years. But I think I can tell it to you now that we still can be a nation in our ascent. I'm not the guy who's going to tell you that it's morning in America right now. Because it's not. But it can be. And so yes, if you all do your part, we will do ours to make sure that this is still the country where we will look our kids in the eye and tell them we are sovereign. You are sovereign as citizens in this country. That you get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your minds at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what I am here to lead us to. And with your help, that is what we are going to revive to save this great country. Thank you for coming out today, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. We love you back, guys. Thank you. God bless you. And may our best days still yet be ahead of us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Captain.
Thank you. You spread the word here. We're going to do this. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here, guys. Proud of you, man, asking that question. Hard work's the way to go. Proud of you, man. You keep working on it. 13 years old, you're here. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you, man. Good to see you guys. Thank you, darling. It's good to see you, darling. We're going to do this.
I'm with you all the way. And listen, what you did yesterday at Perry, I think that was wonderful.
It was necessary.
Yeah.
It opened my heart.
It did. And our prayers.
It was heavy. Thank you. And pray for that community, for me too, and our family. Thank you. Good to see you guys. I mean, we sat here. Oh, come on up, guys. Come on. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Come on. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Welcome aboard, and we're going to do this.
We're gonna make it happen.
I think we're going to do this. Thank you very much. Spread the message. Love your shirt, man.
Oh, thank you.
You're our patriot.
I love your message.
Thank
I love
you,
your
brother.
message.
Thank you, brother. We're going to do this. Thank you. With your help.
I hope so.
Thank you. We're going to do this. Thank you.
How's it going?
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you, man.
Saw you on
Hey, you want to get one
Timcast.
together?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
We're brothers.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, Tim and
I'm going to see him.
Brandon
You're doing a
Herrera.
live show. We're doing a live show with Timcast, actually.
Yes, I heard
Yeah. Well, spread the word. Have you done the caucus before?
No.
Oh, you got to do it this
We're
time.
going to.
Oh, you bring a bunch of these new people out? That's how we're going to win this?
Yep.
It's going to shock the system. Thank you, guys.
Abolish the ATF.
Oh, of course, yeah. You know it's on my list. I've talked about that.
And the
Yeah, I mean, 75% of it's gone. The entire federal government's gone when I'm there. That's how we get this job done, brothers. Good to see you, man. Good to see you, brother. What's your name?
Leo Dorsey.
Yeah.
So 4 hours to get here.
From where?
Indiana.
Thank you, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate
sure.
it. Thank you for being here.
You mind if I get a...
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Keep it up, man.
Thank you, man. We're not going to stop, brother.
Keep it up.
Our best days are ahead. Thank you, man. Hey, good to see you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, man. Spread the message. And did you read that book, Woke Inc.?
No, I
Check
didn't.
it out. It's going to be right up your alley. It's going to be right up your alley.
Yeah.
I agree with 95% of what's in there.
Okay.
My thoughts have evolved a little bit, but I think you'll like it. Have you done the caucus?
Yeah, I definitely.
It's great. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Hey.
Vivek, this is my daughter.
Hey,
Raylan.
good to meet you, Raylan. Good to meet you. Hey.
I'm Dennis Lexa.
Dennis, good to see
I'm
you.
real
buddy.
good friends with Tim and Darla.
Oh, awesome. You're a good family.
Tim was the best man at my wedding.
Darla's been huge, and Tim's been huge too. Thank you, guys.
You are blowing this place up. It's
Oh,
awesome.
we're not going to stop till we get this done, and we owe it to your generation.
Well, if you get to the White House, I want to come back here and sing the anthem. I can't give that to
No,
you.
I'm
because
trying to
that
look
was
at this.
given
I'm
to
trying to
me
look at
by a
this.
Secret Service agent.
Beautiful. We're going to do that. You come to the White House and do that.
When I sang in front of the White House, I go around the country on motorcycle trips and sing the anthem all over the monuments.
We're going to invite you to the White House. If you're friends with Tim and Darla, I mean that. We're going to invite you to do it.
I appreciate that.
Count on
That'd
it.
be awesome.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, guys. Proud of you for being here, guys. Thank you. Thank you. These your boys? Thank you for bringing them.
I've got 8 kids, so
I've seen you.
I've
seen you before. Good to see you again. Thanks for everything.
Yes.
Spread the message.
Well, we started homeschooling because of the crap going on. So.
Yeah, we're doing that now. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good to see you, man.
Good to meet you.
How old are you?
Pleasure meeting you.
Good to see you, man. Get
I'm
your
a fan.
generation out. Thank you for bringing them.
Yep. He actually seen DeSantis about 2 months ago, and he said you
Come
are.
back. I appreciate it. I mean, I like the guy, but when it comes to leading this country, we got to have a vision for where we're going. You bring other people in your generation out, we're going to shock the system, brother. Have you done the Iowa caucus?
I have.
Yeah.
I probably will for you.
Thank you. You
Yep.
spread the message. I
Yep,
appreciate
I
it.
will definitely
Thank
do
you,
that.
guys. Thank you for coming, man. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Hi. Good to see you. Oh, yeah, no, it's okay.
Can I
Good
give
to
you a
see you.
hug?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for talking about the things that you do. It's just so impressive
Thank
and
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. Is that your family?
It is. We
Okay.
don't want him filmed.
Oh, okay. We can just move it for a second. Yeah, thank you. Or we can keep him out of it.